Awesome. Don't worry, I'm still going to be nice. It's fine. It's fine. What I want you to do is I want you to imagine right now that you're standing out in the soundings theatre. Perhaps it's 8:50. You're about to go on stage because you are delivering the keynote for the AgileNZ conference. How do you feel as that spotlight comes up, illuminating you? Do you start to get that sinking feeling deep in your stomach? Do your palms perhaps begin to sweat? Do you just want to run away? But of course you can't because everybody's watching you. And then you start to realize that actually maybe people are now kind of whispering about you and they're jeering and they're kind of, sort of going, who's this guy? What's up with this guy? And you realize suddenly that you're actually kind of ugly and you're hideous and your hair's all wrong and you're wearing all the wrong clothes. Just imagine that right now. In Shakespeare's play, As You Like It, there's a line that says, all the world's a stage. And for people with social anxiety disorder, like me, our world is that stage. Before we go on, I'd just like to give a definition of social anxiety disorder from the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual that psychologists and doctors use to diagnose these things. And they say that it is a persistent fear of social situations in which the person is exposed to unfamiliar people or to possible scrutiny by others. The individual fears that he or she will act in a way that will be embarrassing and humiliating. Exposure to the feared situation almost invariably provokes anxiety. The feared situations are avoided or else endured with intense anxiety and distress. I mean, that's great, but it's all kind of clinical and it's actually a bit sort of circular. What, social anxiety disorder is a disorder where people in social situations experience anxiety? Yeah, that's not very helpful. So instead, I want to give you my definition of social anxiety disorder. Social anxiety disorder is scripting phone calls in advance. Say you need to ring up the IRD because you need to give them some information. So what it is it's writing down everything that you're going to say. Hello, my name is Hodder and I need to talk to you about thinking about what they're going to talk about, what the person's going to respond with, and how you're going to respond to each of their questions, and maybe creating a bit of a diagram, a bit of a tree diagram on how you're going to respond to each possible sort of question that you're going to be asked. Social anxiety disorder is exact change every time. Don't you hate it when you go to the shop and you buy something and, I don't know, let's say it's like $3.50 and you've got a $10 note, and then they go and they give you, like, first of all, you've got to get your stuff, then they give you the receipt, and they put the receipt on the bottom, and then they give you, like, the notes on top and the coins on top of that, and you've got to try and... No, just... Social anxiety disorder is when you don't have the exact change, walking home in the rain because you don't want to deal with the bus driver when you give him the $20 note and he looks at you real grumpily and it's like, well, who do you think you are? So rather, you think, maybe there's one type of pain and that's walking home in the rain, but then there's a whole other level of pain and that's talking to someone else. Social anxiety disorder is being in a strange town and it's lunchtime and you're hungry, so you think, well, where shall I go for lunch? Well, really, there's only one option because, and that's McDonald's, because, well, McDonald's is exactly the same in every single city, no matter where you are. Almost exactly the same, because they're on different streets and they're in different locations. So what you got to do is you got to scope out where it is, and you got to plan your approach, like how you're going to get there. So what you do is you find your target, but you can't look too eager. You can't look like you're kind of looking in. So what you got to do is maybe on the other side of the road, just walk past nonchalantly and, yeah, not too busy. Perfect. Just the right level of busy, because if it's not busy enough, then of course you're the only one in there and you're going to get all the attention. So, but if it's too busy, then there's lots and lots of people. But no, this is perfect. 11:53 is a good time to go. So. Okay, but then of course you can't look like you're going straight in because then people will think, oh, that guy was just there, what a weirdo, looking in to see how busy it was. So you kind of walk around the block and then sort of turn around and then wander back in, and you get in there and you line up and you're looking at the menu and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, all right, I'm going to have the Big Mac combo with the Coke Zero. Okay, Big Mac combo with the Coke Zero. So you line up and you're rehearsing in your head, and it's really good because It's like talking to a machine because the workers at McDonald's are programmed to act like machines, so it's perfect for someone like me. So it's okay, Big Mac combo with a Coke Zero, Big Mac combo with a Coke Zero. And then it's your turn. It's like, okay, I would like a Big Mac combo with a Coke Zero. Sorry, roll out a Coke Zero. What do you do? Okay, panic, thoughts are racing. What's the first thing you see? Sprite. I'd like a Sprite, thanks. Bugger, you don't even like Sprite. Social anxiety disorder is sitting at McDonald's, having a Big Mac combo with a Sprite and not even enjoying it. But perhaps most importantly, social anxiety is building a giant wall around yourself, separating you from the world. Social anxiety is watching everyone else live their lives while you just live in fear. Wow, why am I telling you all this, right? That's a bit heavy. Well, it's because I want to destigmatize mental health and I want to destigmatize mental diversity. And why do I want to do that? Well, I want to start a conversation about mental diversity in IT. Actually, that's not quite true. I don't want to. I was anyone but me. I want them to do it. And I mean, after all, I'm doing okay now. My career's going well. My family life's going well. Everything's under control. It's no longer a disorder. I can handle it. My life's going well. And after all, if I start talking about it, well, then what will people think of me? And that's when it hit me, like a bucket of water. It's like, well, okay, if I'm not willing to stand up here with all my benefits and all my privilege and all my luck, well, then how can I possibly expect anyone else to? Okay, well, why do I even want this conversation to happen at all? Well, there are two reasons. One, as Agilists, we have an obligation to. The very first value of the Agile Manifesto is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We spend a lot of time and energy talking about tools and processes, and you go to all the stands out there and you can find out all the latest tools, what's going to help you with your continuous development, and what's the latest visual management board that's going to integrate all your tickets and all your things, that's going to give you beautiful dashboards, it's going to be amazing. We talk a lot about processes, well, the Scrum framework versus, Kanban, which one is better, which one should be used. But how often do we talk about individuals and interactions? What kinds of individuals we have on our teams and what kinds of interactions work best with the kinds of individuals we have? That's a conversation I want to have. The fifth principle of the Agile Manifesto says we build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need. Well, if we aren't aware of the kinds of special support some of our peers need and how different people perform in different environments, then how can we possibly live up to the values of the Agile Manifesto? How can we really call ourselves Agilists? Secondly, it makes business sense. If your employees and colleagues aren't getting the support they need to thrive, then you're missing out on a massive amount of potential. And trust me, you have a massive amount of potential that you possibly aren't meeting. 1 in 6 New Zealanders will be diagnosed with a mental illness sometime in their life. We talk about, in our industry, we talk about fostering creativity and we need, we need to challenge the status quo. Diversity brings that creativity you're looking for. We need to tap into these individuals and work out how we can bring out the best in them. And I'm going to talk about a bunch of superpowers and a bunch of massive advantages you can get by having a mentally diverse workplace. But first, it's disclaimer time. I'm going to make a whole ton of sweeping generalizations. Okay, I'm going to talk about sort of personas, and there's a danger that when I do that, you'll go, oh, okay, all people, say, with depression are like this, or all autistic people are like this. That's not true. So everybody is different, and everyone is unique. I'm not an expert. I've had some experiences myself. I've talked to a bunch of people that have a bunch of experiences, and I've done a ton of research, but I myself am not an expert. This isn't my day job researching this stuff, but I want to talk about it, I want to bring it into the open, and I want to raise a whole bunch of questions. And finally, I'll say, studies show. You'll find a lot of conference speakers will say, studies show, blah, 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 blah. And you're right to sit there and go, well, what studies? At the end of the slide, deck, will be a link which shows you all the studies that I'm going to cite. So you can sort of check out, when I say studies show this, you can go, oh yeah, well let me just go check the source on that myself. I'm going to use a word, neurodiversity. Neurodiversity comes from the Agile community, and it's a word that they use to talk about how autism and mental illness aren't necessarily disabilities. They're just natural differences that occur in the population. And I came across this definition of neurodiversity that I really love. And that is that neurodiversity is the beautiful mosaic of behavioural and mental variances between us all. So I'm going to use the word neurodiversity in two ways. One is to talk about people that have the kinds of differences that typically get labelled. It's like bipolar disorder or anxiety disorder. But I'm also going to use it to talk about the differences between us all and the way we all differ in the ways that we communicate and the ways that we talk. Okay, so now it's time to meet some of our superheroes. Disclaimers aside. All right, the ADHD Crusader. Now this is awesome. ADHD Crusader. This is why you want ADHD Crusader in your team. So ADHD is characterized by problems paying attention, excessive activity, restlessness, possibly disruptive behavior, and impulsivity. Okay, so let's look at some of the superpowers you get. Okay, the ADHD Crusader is amazing in a crisis. You'll find that in ER, the ER in hospitals, emergency response workers, stock traders and entertainers, you'll find a high proportion of people with ADHD in those occupations. Why? Because when it's crisis time, that's when they're operating at their peak. Their brains are often always in overdrive, and so when suddenly you get a crisis, that's exactly what they're best suited for. Super creative. So in a study, there's your first one, you can check it out later. Adolescents with ADHD were found to have a higher rate of being able to overcome constraining examples. For example, that's being able to think outside the box. They were found to score higher than those without ADHD in a measure of divergent thinking. And another study found that people with ADHD scored higher in original creativity and creative achievement than those without ADHD. Now, even Superman had his kryptonite, and so our ADHD Crusader also has some kryptonite. So the ADHD Crusader, is easily bored. If you're doing something that they don't perceive to be of having value, then maybe they can start to wander and start doing something else that they do perceive as having value. Ideas can run away from them. So, you can imagine that they're the one in the room where everyone's sort of throwing out ideas and they're like, yeah, what we're going to do is, okay, we've got like Uber Eats, right? What about like Uber for makeup, right? So imagine that, like you're standing there in the bathroom and, you're trying to do your makeup and, but you don't have the right one. So what you can do is like you can take a selfie and we'll build an algorithm that works out like depending on, what you'll do is you'll say, all right, I'm going out to an evening event. These are the clothes that I'm going to wear, and it'll detect your skin tone and your hairstyle, and it will tell you the exact makeup, and then we'll deliver it. Yeah, okay, so ideas can sort of run away on the ADHD Crusader a bit. And because of those things, they can focus on, quote, the wrong things. So, for the ADHD Crusader, it's not the wrong thing. This is $1 million idea. This is great, it's what we're going to do. And of course, they were easily bored by that other task. You asked them to do some invoicing, and no, let's explore this Uber for makeup. So ADHD Crusader has a bit of kryptonite that we need to keep under control. The second superhero I'm going to introduce you to is Dr. Depression. Dr. Depression is great to have on your team because there's a study, there's your second one. There was a study where they asked drivers if they were above average. And what they found is 93% of US drivers rated themselves as above average, which is, of course, impossible. And this was across all genders, all backgrounds, all ethnicities, and it's been replicated in other countries, all except for one population, and that was with people who had been diagnosed with depression. People who had been diagnosed with depression had a higher, they had a more accurate perception of their own abilities. Some might call it a negative mindset, but actually it's a more realistic mindset. There's another, so 9 out of 10 startups fail. It might be because the CEOs don't handle all the boring stuff like they should. They believe that they are better than they are. They believe that there's a better market fit than there really is. The ADHD Crusader coming along and convincing you that Uber for makeup is the next best thing and you've got to get in on the ground floor. That is called optimism bias, and a perfect antidote for optimism bias is a prescription from Dr. Depression, and that is called realistic expectations, the negative mindset. They'll give you a healthy dose of reality. And they'll tell you where it's going to fail, why it's going to fail, and why we shouldn't pursue it. Dr. Depression's kryptonite. Well, they can sometimes appear asocial. If they're having a down day or a down week, then they might appear to not be as engaged as other people. They can appear to be pessimistic. Well, yeah, and that's why we like them. And they might have more sick days than other people. Our agent of autism. You are likely, if you're working in Agile and you're working in technology and IT, you are likely to have autistic colleagues. And you are likely to have autistic colleagues that don't know they are autistic. What are their superpowers? Intense focus. I was talking to an autistic developer from England, works for the BBC, and he talked about how one of his things is he's always got to write one more unit test, one more unit test, one more unit test. And one day he was doing that, and then he discovered that 2.5 days had passed and he hadn't eaten, he hadn't drunk, he hadn't gone to bed. Okay, in that case it was a problem, but it demonstrates that, or it illustrates then that your agent of autism can focus in on the task and just really go for it. Attention to detail and out-of-the-box problem solving. Temple Grandin is a really well-known autistic person, and she revolutionized the way that we build slaughterhouses for cattle. She also talks about how her brain she thinks in pictures. And so she talks about how people with autism, they might not be great necessarily at talking verbally or thinking verbally, which is why you might see you might find it difficult to communicate verbally with an autistic person. But that's because they're thinking in pictures, and she was able to visualize the path through the slaughterhouse from the perspective of a cow, looking at the diagrams and everything, and was able to run simulations in her head about how things should be designed, what the cow would be perceiving, and what fear that cow would feel as they went through. She also says that without autism, you better like your computer because you're not getting a new one. So what's our agent of autism? What's their kryptonite? Well, sensory overload can be one. So autistic people can be very sensitive to all kinds of stimulation, like light, like sound, smells, and tactile. Communication may be less verbal. So I talked about how Temple Grandin thinks in pictures. It might be that you might have a non-verbal autistic person in your team, and then so it might be better to talk to them via, say, instant messenger or something like that. Okay, our anxiety avenger. This guy's great because it's me. Superpowers. Okay, deep analysis. I've gone through my entire life analyzing, some might say over-analyzing, every single situation that I've been in. With anxiety, it's caused by an overactive part of the brain that detects danger and fear. So instead of just detecting danger when there actually is danger, I detect danger like with everything. So I'm always analyzing situations, always looking for danger. What I talked about with McDonald's is great. When I'm working on an Agile team and I'm thinking through, say, a user journey, I'm thinking through all the ways that user will be perceiving everything as they go through. Well, wait, they might get frustrated with this question, and that might cause them to drop out. Maybe we should reword it this way because it's a lot gentler. Harness emotion. So I've learned how to turn that adrenaline and the stress that comes from always being scared into passion and excitement. And so I harness that and I go, right, all right, adrenaline, I'm going to use you for some good. And then we turn it into excitement, and I can come in, I can give a presentation, and I can show a lot of enthusiasm and excitement. And imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is where you feel like you're not qualified for the job, like you shouldn't be there, like you're an imposter. Well, how is that a superpower? Well, when I started out, as a tester, a software tester, and I don't know what I was doing there, and I really shouldn't have been there, or so I thought. So I read every single book that there was, every single article. I watched all the videos. I went to the conferences. I then reached out to like the industry leaders to go, okay, look, what do you think of this? Should I be talking like this? Should I, what do you think of this work? And got a lot of guidance and mentorship because I didn't think I should be there, then I made sure that I was like the smartest person in the room. No one could get me then. If I had all the answers, then no one could possibly attack me. All right, so what's my kryptonite? Well, collaboration can be difficult because I need time to prepare. You ask me for my opinion on something, then likely I'm probably going to come up with like 5 or 6 different possible responses. And then as I try and work out which one is the most appropriate based on the information at hand, who I'm talking to, what's appropriate, the political situation, people are like going, hello, wake up. I've actually got a really great manager at the moment, and she asked me a question, and I paused for about 20 seconds, and she said, okay, I realize you're probably now about 5 steps ahead. I was like, oh yeah, okay, so just go back, just tell me the first thing, and it's okay, I'm not going to judge you on it. And low confidence, so sometimes I can second guess myself, or I think, yeah, I can do this, and then at the last minute, oh no, I can't. I'm just going to touch on the social model of disability, and I sort of touched on it with the neurodiversity definition. And that is that our disabilities are a interaction between an impairment and our environment. So according to this model of disability, disability isn't something that's inherent in us. It's how our impairments interact with our environment. So let's look at, say, a neurotypical person and look at that through the lens of disability. So I have an impairment, and that is that I can't go 2 or 3 hours working without sort of getting tired and hungry. And that's like most people. So what have we done in our industry and across all work? Well, what we do is we say, that's cool. In fact, what we're going to do is every 2 hours, we're going to have a break, and we're going to have lunch breaks and afternoon breaks. And it's completely socially acceptable for you to get up and make yourself a coffee and maybe have a chat, because we've molded our environment so that our impairments don't become a disability. So if we look at our superheroes and look at their kryptonites, okay, so how can we work with our environments to make sure that it's not a disability? We have a problem. We come in, it's Agile Time. All right, we're going through an Agile transformation. Okay. So what's the very first thing we do if we're coaches or we're leading a transformation? When we come in, we say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to implement daily stand-ups. We're going to have fortnightly retrospectives. We're going to co-locate everyone, and we'll get extra points if we do hot desking. Perhaps what we'll do is we'll do a kick-off meeting, and what we'll do is we'll get everyone to write down their thoughts and feelings on a card, and then we'll have them read them out to everyone. I was in a kick-off meeting, and the game was that we had to pick out a question from a hat and then describe and then answer that question in front of everyone. A great way for everyone to get to know each other. And my question was, what is your deepest personal fear? Yeah. I politely refused to answer that question. I mean, a couple reasons, but yeah. And so what happens? We implement all these things. We expect people to talk, and we expect people to be engaged, and then what happens? Well, we judge people who don't fully embrace, people who don't tailor themselves to our processes. we implement a bunch of processes, and if people aren't willing to tailor themselves to those processes, well, to the quiet woman who didn't speak up, we say she wasn't engaged with the process. The man who refused to stand up and write an emotion on a balloon, we say, oh, well, Agile isn't for him. Remember, according to the Agile Manifesto, we should be tailoring Agile to our people, not tailoring our people to Agile. So let's go back to those values, individuals and interactions. We need to create a culture of psychological safety. Project Aristotle, Google did this, and they did a study, and I just love how Google can just throw millions of dollars at problems because it's just a drop in the bucket. So they threw millions of dollars at this problem, and that is, what do high-performing teams all have in common? And the study went over a couple of years, and it was really weird. It's like you had teams that did all kinds of different processes. You had teams that were older. You had teams that were younger. You had teams that were comprised of all kinds of different diversities. And they couldn't work out what it was about the high-performing teams. And what they discovered was it was psychological safety. And that is the safety to be able to make mistakes, to be able to show vulnerability and not be judged for it. So ways that we can build that kind of psychological safety. Well, one is to not treat mental diversity, neurodiversity differently than any other diversities. So talking about it removes the stigma. I learned of this really cool technique. Now, we're all different and we all interact in different ways. So wouldn't it be great if everyone had like I often sort of, when I talk to people, and I have to learn all kinds of different ways for interacting with people, and it seems so complicated because, well, I go through a lot of coaching and people say, okay, well, when you're talking to someone, a CEO, then what you got to do is you got to talk about values and you got to blah, 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 blah. And I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be really useful if everyone just came with a user manual? So why don't we all create a user manual for ourselves? And I'll give you links that'll show you how to do it. But what if everyone on your team created a user manual that talked about their style of working, what they value, what they don't have patience for, how best to communicate with them, how to help them, and what people might misunderstand about you. Then everyone can swap the user manuals with everyone else, and then we know how to interact with everyone. I'm a software tester, and when I join a team, maybe that I haven't worked before, I like to set up rules of engagements with the developers, because sometimes developers don't like to be interrupted, and sometimes they do like to be interrupted, but how can you tell when? So I go in and I say, okay, I can remember one in particular. We made a deal. If he had his headphones on, then I contact him via instant message. If he has his headphones off, then I can go up and talk to him. Nice, concrete rules. Oh, it was great. It just made working so much easier. Be open. Make it okay for employees to say, I'm having a bad day and I need some quiet time, and respecting that. Being okay with people not always being social. So we have a lot of team building events. We have Friday drinks. We go out and we do stuff, or maybe we have an event on the waterfront. Be okay with people saying no thanks, but do continue to ask people. Even if people don't come, still continue to ask them. It makes people feel involved, makes them feel included, but they don't have an obligation to attend. Find out people's communication style. I was shocked to discover that some people love talking on the phone. I had a manager who hated that I would send him emails, and he would like, no, just come up and just ring me up. See, and I hate talking on the phone because it's like the worst of both worlds, because when you're talking to someone in person, okay, you sort of got to think on the fly, and it's really hard because you got to, they ask you a question, you've got to answer right away. But at least you can kind of show you can give some visual cues that you're thinking. So they can ask you, so what do you think about this proposal? And you can go, that's a tough one. Let me think about that. On a phone, that goes away. So what do you think about that proposal? Are you there? I hate talking on the phone. I love sending emails. So for me, I love how I mean, the internet was like the greatest invention ever, because it's now socially acceptable to sit in an office and type a message to someone, even if they're in the same room as you. Because it gives me time to compose my thoughts. I can write it in such a way that it's written perfectly. I know exactly what I want to say. I can review it, I can reread it, and I can send it. And then they can send a response, and then I can take the time to decode their response, work out what it is that they're saying, and then work out how I'm going to respond. I love it. But some people hate that. So just find out, well, how do you want me to contact you? So for me, it's, okay, if it's urgent and you need an answer right away, then yes, it's okay to phone me. If I've got my headphones on, then it's okay to tap me on the shoulder if it's something I'm needed for right away, but I would rather you instant message me and then I can respond at my own convenience. For all other inquiries, please send me an email. Reconsider group activities. I find that in Agile, we do a lot of extroverted activities, and I think that's because most Agile coaches, just by virtue of their work, are all extroverted people, and we all think that everyone else likes the same things that we like. I mean, I thought everyone else likes talking via instant message. No, these crazy people who like talking on the phone. What is with that? They talk about like the weather and things like that, and I just don't get it. So, well, you can look outside and see what the weather's like. Incidentally, I've learned that when someone asks you, how are you? Get this, the correct response is, fine, thank you, how are you? It wasn't, well, this morning, yeah, I digress. So think about activities where, let's say you're doing a retrospective. Well, maybe give people time to prepare in advance. So you can say, okay, before the retrospective, send out a little mini agenda and say, we're going to be doing these activities. We might be doing a mood line. If you don't know what a mood line is, you can read about it here. We will be asking you to stand up and do this. If you have any questions or queries, contact me beforehand. Give people an opportunity to say, I'm not comfortable doing that, but if it's okay, can I give you my thoughts beforehand? Can you put them up there? And I am engaged and I am listening, but is it okay if I don't stand up and participate? See, by building a culture of psychological safety, you can do that, and then everyone can participate without collaborating in the way that you think people should collaborate. Many introverts prefer to communicate in ways other than talking, and may be skilled in drawing or writing. So incorporate activities that involve drawing and writing, as well as talking. Introverts can be very attentive listeners, so they may notice things and make connections that extroverts miss. There's there's this woman I really admire from the UK. Her name is Catherine Kirk. She's an Agile coach. She works with corporates. And she says that in Agile coaching, we seem to have an overemphasis on facilitators. And maybe what we need are more contemplators. I really love that idea, and I'm hoping to work with some people here to work out what quiet coaching might look like. Create a visible agenda so people know what's going on, and give honest and detailed feedback. So if things aren't working, have a conversation about it, but make it clear and explicit. Don't talk in metaphors and say, well, there are concerns that, what are the concerns, and what can I do to address those? Okay, let's look at environment and support. So create diverse environments. Oh my goodness, this trend towards open plan offices are a nightmare if you're trying to do creative thinking work. And what is software development? It's creative thinking work. You're coming up with novel solutions to problems that haven't been solved before. I mean, if they had been solved before, then you just go and buy that solution off the rack. That's why we're here, writing custom software. We're inventors, we're not manufacturers. This benefits everyone. So think about having different types of chairs and seating. Have quiet spaces, breakout areas. So places where people can go and just relax, but also quiet places where people can go and just be quiet, and then respect those areas as being quiet places, dark, quiet places. Have a range of environments where people can mingle informally, sit in small groups, or participate in active games and workshops. So have those areas where people can be active and loud and engaging, and have quiet areas where people can be quiet and contemplative. There's a trend in Agile. Somewhere along the way, we took the idea of cross-functional teams and turned it into cross-functional people. We conflated the idea that there should be people on the team so that the team itself can perform every task that they're given, with every individual on the team should be able to perform any task that the team is given. I'm going to nicely challenge that and say, no, let people focus on their specialties. It's okay if one person wants to own the coding standard and that they are and you're probably going, who would want to do that? This is what I'm talking about with this diversity. There are people, it's like, man, the coding standard is my thing, right? I'm going to write the coding standard and I'm going to maintain it, and I'm happy to do the code reviews where we check that the coding standard's being maintained. This is a good thing. Rather than make everyone be responsible for the coding standard, if people don't want to be, are they going to do as good a job as someone who's like, if this is what really gets them up in the morning, is like coding standards, like, wait, you use tabs and we use spaces. Wait a minute, we put lines between our classes and you, yeah. I'm a tester, I love testing. Let me be a tester. I'd rather be a really great tester than a mediocre developer. Consider that maybe soft skills are missing. Again, another thing that frustrates me is that we look at people's soft skills and we sometimes overemphasize their importance. We do meetings and someone doesn't participate, or no, sorry, someone doesn't talk. And we immediately make the mistake of going, oh, if someone's not talking, they're not collaborating. There are a lot of ways to collaborate that don't involve talking. You can be collaborating online, you can be writing messages, you can be, maybe you do communicate through your bug tracker. That's okay. If it's working for the team, it's okay. We can let go of the dogma that face-to-face talking is the best way to collaborate all the time. Consider that work output might be non-linear. The ADHD Avenger might do a 2-hour burst followed by a 6-hour recovery time and be much more productive than someone sitting and doing a constant 8-hour output. So that person, you might be staring out the window, might be contemplating, might be thinking of a really deep, complex problem. Just because they're not sitting there tapping away at a keyboard doesn't mean they're not being productive. Just because they did 2 hours and then are now like recharging somewhere doesn't mean they're not being productive. And finally, just give people the benefit of the doubt. Now, again, another sort of disclaimer, yeah, there are assholes, okay? There are people who can be assholes. But it can be really easy to jump to that conclusion before finding, all the evidence. So, that guy that insists on sitting in his office, who is really skeptical of these daily stand-ups that we're doing, and then when you finally manage to get him here, he doesn't really want to participate. It's really easy to go, Agile's not for him. It's really easy to go, that guy, he's just not a participator. It's really easy to go, that guy's such an asshole. He might not be. He might be introverted. He might have depression. He might have social anxiety. Just give him the benefit of the doubt and start having the conversation with, okay, how do we make collaborating work for you? And maybe it's not face-to-face meetings. Maybe he'll send in his daily updates on a card, give it to the Scrum Master, and the Scrum Master will speak on his behalf. I don't know. Maybe he is an asshole, but that shouldn't be the first thing we assume. Next steps. Okay, this link here, those are things that you can all do kind of without investment with your leadership and your management and everything like here. But go to this link and there's a whole bunch of articles with case studies, with research on inclusive collaboration. There's lots of articles about autism and depression and anxiety, how you can change your environment to best support everyone, all kinds of cool techniques for for doing this stuff. So that QR code should work, but otherwise there's the link itself. Plus it's got all the references to when I said studies show, you should find those studies in there as well. Sally Ann Freudenberg, she's an Agile coach from the UK, started off this inclusive collaboration campaign, of which I'm a part. And she's got this article, she's got a book that you can download from LeanPub, and it's the Inclusive Collaboration Experiments. And it contains a lot of Agile activities, a lot of material that you can do that is inclusive. And one I like in particular is the science experiment. And I guess I won't spoil it, but just check it out. So it gives you things that you can do with your teams to bring out people's differences, to work with people to work with all kinds of diversities. If you're interested in this stuff, then this is the URL for the Inclusive Collaboration Campaign. So there is an international campaign which seeks to raise awareness of the benefits of a neurodiverse workforce and the resources and tools that you can then use to foster that kind of environment. So if you want to be involved with that and you want to sign up to the newsletter, then that's the URL right there, and that's their Twitter handle. Just wait for people to take their photos. There's nothing worse than you finally get it in focus, and then the person switches. Awesome. Modern workplaces are looking to innovate and challenge the status quo to give them that competitive edge. Innovation and thinking outside of the box requires diversity of thinking, and diversity of thinking requires diversity of minds.